Just come off the indoor practice field as Tennessee is indoors today due to some rain outside and getting ready for the second scrimmage of fall camp, which comes up on Friday.
Perfect. How were the routes on air today, Austin?
There were no routes on air while we were there.
Okay.
Just a lot of individual work.
Okay.
Receivers were working with Kelsey Pope. Quarterbacks were working with Joey Halsley. And they were not working together, so it was just a lot of individual work on this Tuesday as, again, some of the practice schedule got shifted once they decided to dump a lot of rain here about 7 o'clock.
There you go. Well, Austin, what is the health update at wide receiver? Chris Brazel, I know Mike Matthews working with a non-contact jersey, and Braylon Staley, who has missed a couple of practices. What can you tell us about those guys getting back in Tennessee's wide receiver room that has been the walking wounded?
Yeah, Brazel has been back out there the last couple of practices, and Mike's been out there since last week, even with a knee brace. It was good to see Braylon Staley was at least out today. I mean, he's not going through practice. He's got the hamstring, but he was out there. He's not been out there. And so he was out and about during stretch. And, again, I think you're slowly moving back to full health. But I think, especially in Staley's case, it's more of a slow build. I think Brazel will do more and more each day. And I think Mike, it's just about managing him to make sure he's healthy come, the 30th of August.
Austin, when you look at the scrimmage from over the weekend, the reports are, and I know Pete Nakos wrote it on 3, you guys have spoken about it at VolQuest, George McIntyre was the accurate quarterback, and the other two guys may have struggled a little bit more. What does that mean this early? Is this typical defense starts ahead of the offense, or what is the latest in this quarterback battle and what the weekend meant for Joey Aguilar and Jake Marklinger?
I think if you went back and read kind of the reaction to every first scrimmage of fall camp the last several years, even dating back multiple stabs, you're going to hear the offense is behind, the defense won today, those similar type things. I think that's, pretty constant across the board. It was not a great day for Jake Marklinger. He struggled with accuracy. Joey Aguilar was a little bit more consistent than that. And then, of course, George McIntyre probably had the best day of the 3. And, right now it would still be a long shot to win the quarterback competition, but at the same time, the more he continues to progress, the more of a real option he becomes as we get into the season. So George is, I think, got the foot on the pedal, and he's hitting the gas and trying to go as hard as he can, sees an opportunity that maybe he did not think would be there at this point in time 6 months ago.
Austin Price with us this morning, VolQuest's and on 3. Austin, when it comes down to the quarterback play also, Will and I spoke about this earlier, but if you do have a situation where Jake doesn't cut it and you have Joey Aguilar in a position where it's spotty, is there a short leash to pull whenever you may want to put George McIntyre in?
I think that depends on what spotty is. Is spotty inaccurate or is spotty turning the football over? If you're turning the football over and you're putting your defense in some tough spots, then that's different. If you're just simply inaccurate and you're punting the ball away and playing some type of field position, then I think it obviously has got a little bit of a different feel to it. So I think a lot of it depends on kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about, spotty. At this point, I will be shocked, if Joey Aguilar is not the starter for Syracuse, which is no great leap of faith, right? I mean, he's been long thought to be the front runner because of his experience, but I think he's having a solid enough fall camp, even minus the scrimmage, because they do a lot of scrimmage work during the course of practices to where you feel like, he's got a pretty good shot to be Tennessee's starter against Syracuse. And again, that's not jumping out on any kind of, small limb. That's a fairly big limb to jump out on.
I guess the other side of that is, too, depending on who was going with which group 1, 2s, or 3s, and the other side of that, too, Austin, do we just have to look at it and say if you're playing against a Tim Banks defense, you're going to struggle regardless? Is that a great sign that this defense is potentially keeping the same standard that they had in 24 and 23 going into this 25 season? I think that's probably more necessary than we think. That and the running game for this 2025 Vols team.
Yeah, Tennessee was able to effectively run the football Saturday. That's not a shock. They've been able to run the football under Josh Heupel. They've got 3 2,000 career-yard rushers since he's been here, with Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and then Dylan Sampson. And defensively, they've gotten better each and every year under Tim Banks. Statistically, they've improved each and every year. Can they do that again this year? I think it's close. I think the defense can be as good. I think a lot of it depends on, kind of where you are health-wise. But you like where they are in the back end. I love the addition of Colton Hood, Ricky Gibson, putting on the weight is big. I love their linebackers, even though they're a little bit young and inexperienced. I think the talent is a big upgrade. And then the defensive line, you're maybe not as deep as a year ago, but, that was ridiculous depth. You're still really deep on the defensive line. So I do think the defense can be really, really good. I think the one thing I'll say this about scrimmages, and you know this, Ramon, you scrimmaged a lot of, internal scrimmages with the Steelers or Tennessee. When a guy picks it off, it has to be another Vol who got beat,
yep.
Or threw a bad pass. When a receiver gets a 60-yard touchdown, there's another Vol DB that got beat. So it's Vol on Vol crime in scrimmages, right? So like when one thing happens positive for one side, that means something negative happened for the other. So
yep.
I don't really get too worked up about it. Get to the season, and that's kind of where everybody's at. Like, figure out who your quarterback's going to be. I think it's going to be Joey Aguilar. And then figure it out and go. And do what you know how to do, which is run the football, play solid defense. And, again, if you go back to a year ago, if Nico was able to hit those deep balls that were wide open against Alabama and Florida and some of those other schools, how does that change the dynamics of those football games? Even though they ended up being really, really close wins for Tennessee, could have been a much bigger win had you connected on those passes. What's the deep ball look like this year for Tennessee?
Right. 100%. Austin Price of VolQuest with us. Austin, what is the latest on Boo Carter working his way back to a full workload? I know Vols fans are circulating Facebook posts from family and all of these things. What can you tell us about on the field, how he is going about earning that trust back, and where are we at with him?
Kind of a little bit, further than we were when we started fall camp. Obviously, he's done some things to get back out on the field, but he's not doing a lot of teamwork. He's doing a lot of individual. He did not participate in the scrimmage. I know Josh said he did. He did in semantics because he fielded punts. He did not participate defensively for Tennessee. So all the talk of like, was he going to play offense? Well, he's got to do what it takes to play defense before he can play offense. So I don't envision him being a factor on offense as of right now. And until we get further down the road, it's hard to envision him playing defense either because, he's got to do some little things off the field that check the boxes for the leadership council, for Josh Heupel, all those things. And, we'll see if he can do it. If he can do it and he makes it to that first game, then I think Boo will be a player for Tennessee all year. I've long thought he's just got to make it to the first game. So you got a couple of weeks here to continue to do the right things off the field. But, he's got to, show up on time. He's got to do the little things well and, go from there.
Austin, how optimistic are you that Gerbon McCoy could be out there week one? And if it's not week one, do you feel confident that he is there against Georgia in week 3?
I'm not optimistic about him playing in Syracuse,
okay.
But I am optimistic. At least there's more optimism that he could potentially be back week 2 against ETSU, which would allow him to get back for Georgia. I think that his path to playing against Georgia is dictated by where he's at against ETSU. If he doesn't play against ETSU, I think they'll hold him, and he'll come back in Starkville on the road at Mississippi State. He's certainly doing more and more and more. He's cutting on that knee, out there when we're out there. More impressive. He's doing box jumps. He's doing a lot of things to strengthen that knee. He is progressing really nicely. Coach Martinez talked yesterday about how competitive he is. And so I think there's a drive there. I don't think he wants to push quick. He wants to be fully healthy, but, he's certainly pushing himself to get back as quickly as he can.
Austin, I felt like Peyton Lewis committed to Tennessee with a lot of fanfare and hopes that he could end up being the guy, but it seems to me Deshaun Bishop or Star Thomas from this past weekend have really challenged him, man. How is that group coming along, man, as it pertains to the rushing attack that the Vols should have this year?
Yeah, I've long thought Deshaun Bishop was going to be the starter, the first running back in the football game against Syracuse. That's not are you surprised by that, Ramon?
A little bit because Deshaun came under the radar. I always think that the higher star guy is going to get a stab at it first, considering Peyton also played just a little bit last year. I didn't know that Deshaun had taken those leaps.
I think what you're saying is accurate when you're talking about as a true freshman.
Yeah.
Like once you've been in the program for a couple of years, I don't think the stars matter, right?
Okay.
And it really shouldn't matter anyway. Like it's the best player should play.
Right.
But I do think in some certain instances, like a highly rated guy gets the benefit of the doubt when they first get here. But for Deshaun Bishop, I mean, he was Tennessee's number 2 running back a year ago. The number 1 guy left. So like it's a natural progression. He's worked his tail off this offseason. Looks like $1 million. So does so does Peyton Lewis. He looks awesome too. He looks really, really big. And I think they're the top 2. Star Thomas is still number 3 tailback for me. But I think you can use him situational. I think he will be a nice change of pace for Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, it's Bishop and Lewis. It's 1A and 1B. And again, I don't think it really matters who starts because I think they're both going to play and, they'll play the hot hand. But I do think that Deshaun Bishop would be the first running back in the game against Syracuse. At least I will be shocked if he's not.
It seems that Sam Pendleton and Wendell Moy both are somewhat settling in on those interior spots, which means right guard is potentially up. How's Jesse Perry been and Sham Umaroff from this past weekend scrimmage, man? I know Sham had a good bit to say about it. Are they in lockstep as when it comes down to them in this starting right guard position playing next to David Sanders Jr.?
Well, Sham can only play left, so Sham's going to be the starting guard. He will be on the left side, and Wendell Moy would shift to the right guard spot.
Oh.
So I think a lot of it depends on kind of where they decide to go. But right now, it feels like Jesse Perry has, the leg up in that race. He's been really impressive to the staff. I know the defensive staff is tell sign. Like, who does the defensive staff not like to go against? Who does Rodney Garner's group not like to go against? But yes, if Sham were to be the guard, he would be at left guard, and Wendell Moy would shift to the right. With of course, that's with Pendleton at center, which is where I think this thing will be headed over the next week or so.
Austin Price of VolQuest's
center position.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Austin Price of VolQuest's with us. Austin, when you look at the tight end position, I know we've talked with you a lot about how Jack Van Doorslayer came in as the better immediate guy maybe over the spring, and now Deshaun Brame has really come on strong. How much do you see those two factoring in at tight end, and how much will that position be a focal point of this offense, considering the 12 personnel they used last year and the lack of depth at wide receiver?
There you go. You hit the nail on the head right there at the end. Depending on how Tennessee's health goes in the receiver room will dictate how much some of those tight ends play, because if you're running a lot of 2 tight end sets, I think they'll rotate a lot. Obviously, it is Ethan Davis and Miles Kitselman, top 2 tight ends in the game. But Brame and Van Doorslayer are certainly coming. Brame had a fantastic scrimmage on Saturday, and Van Doorslayer, who had been out with a concussion, is now back. He was back in full today. He was back in yellow yesterday. Today, back in the normal white offensive uniforms. And so he's back full go. So I think those kids will both play this year. And I think that a lot of it, the amount of time will be dependent on where Tennessee is at the wide receiver position health-wise. The team's getting a little bit healthier by the day. They've been kind of dinged. Right, the news of the morning, not to totally shift you here, but we're talking health, is Josh Josephs, who had missed the last about 3 weeks, and he was out there today doing individual work in a normal orange jersey, which is good for Tennessee because they need to get him back ready to go and kind of knock the rest off over the next week or so before they get the game week against Syracuse. But back to your original point about the tight ends, I think all 4 of those guys that we talked about are going to play this year. But I think as far as the amount will be dependent on the health and what Tennessee elects to do with their 2 tight end sets.
Austin, do you see Ethan Davis and Deshaun Brame specifically just kind of being big slot receivers? Like as athletic as those guys are, and with the lack of depth there, is it fair to say that on any given drive, Josh Heupel would like to use that versatility, and maybe they're in line at the beginning of a drive, but with the tempo and not having to sub, that could be a common way those 2 specifically are employed as more receiving tight ends?
It's certainly possible. I think a lot of it, again, depends on what they elect to do. But I do think that there's certainly an option there to stand up Brame or stand up. I mean, heck, they stand up Kiptleman some out there. It's not like he's always just got his hand in the dirt. But yeah, I mean, I think that both those guys could be used in that way. brain probably a little bit more twitchy than Ethan Davis, but Ethan Davis is an old high school wide receiver who's kind of bulked up and obviously could do that as well.
The tandem of Colton Hood and also Ricky Gibson being starters in opening weekend settles you pretty good. You okay with those two guys being outside at corner?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, what Colton Hood has done in the last year, obviously Travis Hunter, once he got here, gives you a lot of promise. Ricky Gibson has, got a lot of praise yesterday from William Martinez for being probably the most consistent DB. And I was, shocked to hear him say this, the most consistent DB Tennessee had the back part of the year last year. I mean, as he said, he goes, Jermod rightfully got all the praise and got the All-American status, but like those last half of the year, what Ricky did for us was huge, and now Ricky's put on 20 pounds.
Ooh.
And that's how you get to the NFL. You put on the proper weight. You don't play at 160 pounds. You're now playing at 183 or whatever. And Ricky, I think, confidently is probably playing his best football. As we get into fall camp, he got a little dinged up, but he came back and he's all ready to go. And so, yeah, I like where Tennessee's at in the secondary. I really like the depth they have, and we'll see what happens with Boo. We'll see if Boo can get things righted, and then we'll see when Gerbon McCoy makes it back. If those two guys are factors, this secondary has a chance to be uber special because they've got depth and can rotate and keep guys fresh, elite guys fresh.
Real quick, is there a plan for the nickel corner in this or the dime? Because without Boo, okay, there it is. Okay, without Boo, I was just wondering, all right, what if he doesn't check every box?
Well, I think in a perfect world, Jalen McMurray is going to be your star. And then what happens when McCoy comes back? Does Colton Hood shift to nickel? I think you've got a lot of quality DBs that you can throw out in a dime package, but I just don't see them playing a lot of dime. They play a ton of nickel. That's just a regular defense. But the dime stuff, I think a lot of it depends on who they're playing. But I think you'd feel comfortable if you had to go dime with the amount of quality players they have in the secondary.
Understood.
Austin Price of VolQuest On 3, our guest at 8:20 every Tuesday here on the show. A VolQuest subscription. The General's Quarter is exactly what you need in your life for the latest Vol Camp nuggets. And because Shannon Terry is like basically assembling the Avengers on the National On 3 side as well. Austin, thank you for the time. Appreciate you.
Call me Houdini, guys. I got out of this whole interview and didn't have to talk about Savion Hyder or Tristan Keith.
That's right.
See you next week.
Next week. That's right. Thank you, Austin.
Thanks, Austin.
I love it. Good stuff. I had that written down, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of new info out there on either of them. So we're going to wait until Savion Hyder's commitment day next week.
It's honestly just appropriate that, like, the closer we get to the season, like, this is real football decisions being made up there in Knoxville on every campus.